Most schools encourage teachers to call student homes regularly. Both schools that I've worked at have encouraged teachers to call multiple students' homes a day. Today I want to talk about why you need to put down the phone, stop calling student homes, and what you can do instead that's going to 10x your return. Let's go. Now, I think calling home is problematic for multiple reasons. One of which is that you are almost never calling parents or guardians at the opportune time. Because while you are in school, they are typically at work. So calling mom at the nurse's station while she's in the middle of handling business to talk about her child's grade or missing work is just not the best time for parents to be able to communicate with you. Not to mention, most calls are unscheduled. They are a surprise of typically bad news, and even if it's good news, it's still a surprise and catch parents off guard and they're not ready for it. Also run into issues where parents speak English as a second language, and so if you do not speak their native language, it gets very difficult to try and communicate it, even if you do have a translator. What you do make a phone call about can get lost in translation. So you're saying something and parents hear one thing and then they start trailing off and thinking about how they're going to handle this and what they should do best and if they're a good parent or not, and all the kind of like self-talk that happens can stop folks from being able to hear the whole message of what you're trying to communicate. Not to mention, the human memory is pretty faulty. So you might call home, send a message to a parent or guardian, and then by the time it gets to their kid, it's basically whispered down the lane and some things just aren't remembered. And not to mention, it takes too long to call home. Average phone call for me, calling home, even though I try and keep it brief, is about 20 minutes, if not longer. I want to share with you a couple of ways to help you have better communication with parents, guardians, make sure things basically solve all the problems I just talked about. So what do I do instead and why? I'm not against doing phone calls, but I'm going to get to that in a moment. But typically, I send an email instead. Why? First of all, it allows parents to read and reread an email if they need to, so that they understand fully what is going on. Also, when they talk to their child about an issue or something good that's happening in school, we're not just calling home for bad things, and most of us know that, but it's worth being said. When parents do talk to their children about it, it just helps them to be able to say, this is what your teacher said, in not their own words, not their own iteration of it, but exactly what was talked about. I think the biggest piece of this, though, is that it also acts as documentation. There are so many times when, you can document a phone call, but you can't document necessarily what was talked about. It becomes very difficult to do so. So in sending an email, this also allows you to CC interested parties. You could CC the student, you could CC special education coordinator for that student, the school therapist, whoever else needs to be involved. It allows you to contact all those people at once, making sure that everyone is on the same page, and then it becomes documentation so that if you have a meeting, there is this sort of thing to kind of back up what we had talked about before. And this is not a way to catch parents. This is not a way to just cover your butt. It is a way to make sure that we're all on the same page when we're having these conversations about students. Now, if a parent does want to have a phone call, I am more than happy to follow up a phone call with a parent if they would like to, because sometimes there are some things that like emails can take a really long time and you're going back and forth. So setting up a phone call is a great idea because it allows parents to sort of like ask some questions and for you to sort of like prompt them and ask them about a number of things. I find that even better than phone calls are meetings. If a parent can come up to the school, then we can bring different teachers in if necessary. We can bring the student in. We can have this whole collaborative meeting and it gets all of the business done in a given moment. Now, if I do a phone call home, this is incredibly important. Let me not understate this. It is incredibly important to follow up the phone call with another email. You are, again, CCing or BCCing anyone that needs to be on the email, but you're also saying, thank you so much for taking time to have that conversation with me. Thank you for these bits of information. Just as a follow-up, I want to say that we talked about these things, that your child is going to show up for tutoring on this day, or that you know when this sort of tutoring is happening, or when they can come in for help, or when extra credit is due by. You are kind of bookending the conversation with an email. 1, for documentation, 2, to make sure that parents kind of don't forget anything or that the student knows exactly, and for yourself too, so that these become notes that the next time you talk to a parent, if a parent comes in for a parent-teacher conference, you have these notes to pull from, so you can start there a lot of times with parents, because look, there's a lot of stuff to remember, and it's really difficult to do so. Parents know it, you know it. Documenting, sending emails, following up with a phone call, which is followed up with an email, is way easier than just making a phone call. Well, that's that. If you know somebody that needs this video, please consider sharing it with them or sharing it on your social media platform. Hit the like button because it gets this out to more teachers that need it. And that's it, everybody. See you next time. Peace.